Question time.
Laid it out.
Government business orders of the day. Leave the National Party.
I move that so much of standing orders be suspended as is necessary to enable the following motion to be moved forthwith. That this House notes raids by DPIRD on Emmanuel exports, withdrawal from the live export market by livestock shipping services, and reports today that the WA live export cattle industry has reduced by 20,000 head over the last 3 months, and calls for the immediate resignation of the Minister for Agriculture and Food to restore WA's reputation as a reliable supplier of livestock and agricultural produce. Sorry, thank you. I'll sit down.
Leave the House.
The government's prepared to entertain the debate of this bill, this motion, subject to the following addition to the motion. Subject to the debate being limited to 15 minutes for government members and 15 minutes for non-government members.
Members, the question is the amendment be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Against, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Members, as this is a motion without notice to suspend standing orders, it will need an absolute majority in order to succeed. If I hear a dissenting voice, I will be required to divide the Assembly. The question is that the motion as amended be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. The contrary, no. I have counted the Assembly and satisfied myself an absolute majority is present. I declare the motion carried. Leader of the National Party.
Speaker, the Nationals have moved this motion, Mr Speaker, because for the past week we've been... Oh, my apologies. I move that so much of the standing orders be suspended as is necessary to enable the following motion to be moved forthwith. That this House notes raids by DPIRD on Emmanuel exports, withdrawal from the live export market by livestock shipping services, and reports today that the WA live export cattle industry has reduced by 20,000 head over the last 3 months, and calls for the immediate resignation of the Minister for Agriculture and Food to restore WA's reputation as a reliable supplier of livestock and agricultural produce. Mr Speaker, the reason the Nationals have moved this motion is that there seems to be a complete disconnect between what the Premier and his Cabinet thinks the Minister for Agriculture and Food is achieving on the ground and what the community and the sector that she is supposed to be working with and representing around that Cabinet table is actually doing. All-time low, and all-time low is the level of confidence that the agricultural sector...
Member for Belmont and the member for Maylands. I call you both to order for the first time.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The confidence of the sector is at an all-time low, and it's not just in relation to live exports. That may well just be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But reports yesterday that one of WA's exporters had been raided in an effort to secure documents that may well undermine a federal inquiry that is underway at this point in time. In addition to the fact that we're seeing commentary coming from the live export cattle industry saying that they are starting to feel the flow-on impacts, along with the Premier's considerable defence and support, sensible and reasonable in question time today is what the Premier has said this Minister for Agriculture is, defies everything that we hear on the ground and the information that is flowing publicly from the sector that she is supposed to work with. The sector that she is supposed to work with.
Member for Belmont, call you to order for the second time.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now, the agricultural sector is pragmatic and they will work with either side of government. They will. And certainly we've had our fair share of criticisms when we've been in government. Certainly we've had that. Many remember the Honourable Kim Chance, a good and honest member for the Labor Party who was the Minister for Agriculture. He used to go out, he used to listen, he used to work with the sector. This minister has done none of that. The Honourable Kim Chance,
Member for Wanneroo, you can hide behind the Speaker, but I can still hear you. And the member for Maylands, I call you to order for the second time. Member for Wanneroo for the first time.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Honourable Kim Chance took the time to listen, he took the time to reflect the concerns of the sector into the Cabinet, and for that he earned them, and for that he earned the respect of the sector. Despite being from the Labor Party and despite some of those over the opposite side thinking that that is not possible. Now, Mr.
Member for Wanneroo, call your order for the second time. Members, this is a suspension of standing orders. It's only done if it's considered important by a party. I won't have anyone interjecting. Leader of the National
Thank you, Mr.
Party.
Speaker. Those days are gone. This minister does not have the confidence of the sector. The PGA has spoken out, the WA farmers have spoken out. We have seen evidence tabled in the other House that there are concerns from some of our major trading partners, including the Qatari ambassador, very diplomatically pointing out that whilst the minister's agenda might be to increase chilled meat into those markets, he points out that their very strong preference is that they would like to continue working to deliver more of the live product that we create so much of here in this state. Now, this is a big industry. This is a big industry, and diplomats have a diplomatic way of putting that point. But if anyone that has any idea about that industry read that letter that was tabled in the other House, they would know that our trading partners are nervous. They are nervous and they are making it clear to our minister. And this is why we ask the questions of the Premier as to why he is not moving to reinstil some confidence in the sector, because this is a significant sector for the state of Western Australia. So why do we need to raise this issue now on a Thursday afternoon? Because if we have one more sector coming out, we will be in genuine crisis. Esperance farmers have been met with go and talk to the federal government when they want their dog fence extended. So the Premier needs to take better advice about that. His answer in question time was absolutely incorrect. She's supported an animal activist group to gain access to the Fremantle port. Animal activist group to gain access.
The member for Maylands.
Point of order. Point of order, Mr.
Excuse
Speaker.
me, I'm on my feet. Member for Maylands, I'll call you order for the third time.
Point of order.
Point of order.
The member for Bassendean walked straight.
No, the member for Bassendean acknowledged me here to go across, and I let him go across.
And he moved his head forward to the Leader of the Nationals. He did.
Member for North West Central, you walked out before to make a phone call. You didn't acknowledge me, and you didn't acknowledge me on the way back, but I let you go. But if you want to start nitpicking, I'll ping everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The National Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. She supported an animal activist group to gain access to Fremantle Port, a new and unprecedented arrangement.
Minister for Water. Minister for Water.
He's sledging me as he walks out.
You don't, when you go across the chamber, you don't lecture people on the way through, okay? You just walk out of the chamber, okay?
Ask questions about.
Leader of the National
Thank
Party.
you, Mr. Speaker. And today we have concerns emerging from the live cattle exporters, the numbers that have dropped by 20,000 head in 3 months. Quotes, if one sector falls over, it's game over. These are the conversations that are being had within the agricultural sector. Raiding officers of Emmanuel Exports under claims of the fact that they've been blocked from gaining information from the Commonwealth, while an investigation is underway by the Commonwealth Government and our key trading partners. There is widespread concern, and you don't need to hear it from us, Premier. You only need to turn on the radio on any of the stations across regional Western Australia and you will get that feedback firsthand. And if you actually deign to go out there and talk to the people that this impacts and actually understand what they're doing and the confidence that they are losing day by day, you would understand that your minister is doing enormous damage to a sector that you are supposed to be championing. And our question to you is when you are going to make sure that that sector has someone that represents them sitting around your cabinet table.
Mr. Speaker.
Warren Blackwood.
Mr. Speaker, I want to back up the Leader of the Nationals' position in the massive disconnect that exists between this minister and the sector that she purports to represent. We've seen, in fact, in question time today, the Premier acknowledged that she actually pursues stuff. She pursues her agenda. And we've seen that before. We've seen that in respect to genetically modified crops in Western Australia. Despite people wearing cotton and the cotton in the ord issue and also genetically modified canola, we've seen her pursue that. We've seen her pursue standing out alone and not going along with national standards in a lot of the ag sector. So she's sitting out there running her own agenda in Western Australia against a national position. We've seen her out there espousing regenerative agriculture. We've seen her out there espousing regenerative agriculture, which we have no pesticides and no artificial fertilisers, and that represents about 1% of the agricultural sector in Western Australia. She can hardly be standing up for the sector on that. She talks about composting in Katanning, which is about irrelevant as anything that applies to agriculture. And now here we are pursuing her agenda on animal welfare. We know what happened down in Fremantle when she was there marching for the banning of live export in Western Australia. So we know what her position is. She's out there saying that she's looking after the industry, doing all the right things, making these decisions, supporting the farmers in Western Australia. The straw that broke the camel's back on yesterday was the fact that there was a raid on Emmanuel Livestock's offices in Perth, getting into a jurisdiction that is a federal jurisdiction. What I want to know from the Premier today is, what was the basis of that decision? Was this a minister driving this outcome, or was it advice that came from the agency? Did it go to Cabinet? And did the Premier, or actually was the Premier actually made aware that that was actually going to happen? We want to know the distinction between her driving her own agenda, which we know what that agenda is, and looking after animal welfare, which she rightly should be as a minister. This is about confidence in this minister in looking after a sector that's worth a significant amount of money to Western Australia. The livestock sector in Western Australia, 1.4, in fact the sheep sector alone, $1.4 billion. 550 million of that, of course, is sheep meat, about half of which is export sheep meat, live trade overseas, $200 million. And a pretty significant industry that's now under threat. It is right in the balance, as the Leader of the National Party said. We're down to about 14 million sheep in Western Australia. If you seriously disrupt that, there's a cascade effect that flows on. And if you put uncertainty into the sector, which we are seeing now with livestock shipping services, albeit making a commercial decision, but one of the bases for that commercial decision is the signals it's getting from this government. Madam Acting Speaker, this is actually not right. For the sector. This minister is not representing the sector as she should. What we also see is flow-on impacts to the cattle sector, as is written in the motion that we've put up here. 20,000 cattle exported less than last year on the basis of uncertainty that's rippling right through this sector, on the basis of this minister in this government putting that uncertainty out there into the sector. We saw, as the Leader of the National Party said, correspondence back from the ambassador to Qatar, highlighting that they've got their cultural requirements for live export. And by the way, if you want to keep supplying us live sheep, we'll be happy. If you start and want to change that to box beef or box sheep, we're going to go somewhere else. They've got cultural requirements that they have to be met. We know that the livestock exports mainly go into Qatar, into Jordan and into Saudi, and those markets are in jeopardy because of this government. Now, no one, least of which farmers, National Party, Liberal Party, no one accepts what we saw on telly in terms of animal welfare outcomes. That needs to be sorted. That's been ably handled by Minister Littleproud at a federal level. This minister seems to be prepared to shift into jurisdictions that is not her jurisdiction. She actually is trying to work out what it is. So I want to know from the Premier, what is the basis of the decisions that she's making, that she's pushing for? She has an agenda, and there's uncertainty in the industry in Western Australia.
Madam Acting Speaker.
Hello.